Welcome to the only podcast for piano teachers just starting out, Piano Teacher Primer. My name is Angela Toon. Keep listening for the prime pro tips you can use with your own students right away. All right, welcome to Dr. Josh Wright. Thank you so much for coming on with me today for the Piano Teacher Primer podcast. And I have a little bio, a little snippets of your bio here. Dr. Josh Wright received a bachelor's and master's from the University of Utah. And I also went there. And he's got a doctorate from the University of Michigan. He's won competitions and awards, and he studied with Logan, Skelton, Dr. Susan Duehlmeir, and Sergei Babayan. He's married to Dr. Lindsay Wright, who also went to the U. And of course, you're teaching, and we'll hear all about your you've got courses and YouTube channel and all kinds of things we'll hear in more detail later. But thank you for coming on with me. We're excited to hear your story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, of course. And Josh and I actually kind of know each other in real life. I've been a fan for years. And I went to a presentation for piano teachers that you did years ago. And I remember you led us through like a meditation. And this will show why I need other forms of meditation, because I actually fell asleep.
Oh, good.
So I must have been in a very Zen mood that day. I woke up, don't worry, I wasn't falling on the floor or anything, but so yeah, Josh Wright put me to sleep one day. It's great. But yes, so welcome. And I want to hear first, because we know that you've played your whole life and you studied with Susan Duehlmeir at a young age, right? But tell us about when you started teaching piano.
Yeah, I had one little student when I was 12 or 13, and she was 7. And my mom said, yeah, you can try it out. They asked because they heard me play at church. And she was a cute student. I really enjoyed teaching her. Maybe it was a year or so that I taught her. And then my dad is a stonemason, so it's really hard work. What he does is artistic. He's laying the stone, but if you work with him, you're like mixing the cement and hauling all the rock everywhere he needs it. And I hated that work. And so I said, I want to quit when I'm 16. And he's like, okay, well, you have to get some sort of quality job. I don't want you working at McDonald's. Like, you can start your own business or something. And so I arranged some local community concerts. And at the end of the concerts, I would say, I'm taking on new students. It's $10 a lesson, and I'll come to your house. So all the moms just went crazy for that. And I had a full studio within about 2 or 3 weeks.
I'm sure.
So I got to quit stonemasonry. So that was great. For my level of experience, I probably was charging the right amount, but I didn't care. I was like, I'll do anything to get out of this other work. And it wasn't like my dad was, mean or anything at work. It was just hard labor. And I loved doing piano, and I studied a lot of finance books from a really young age because I just loved performing so much. And then when I started teaching, I was like, I love this. I want to be able to make a career out of music in some shape or form. And so I made sure I was always very careful with my money and saved and, budgeted. And so it was great. It taught me a lot. My love for music has taught me a lot of life lessons that have helped me in other areas besides music. So that's kind of how I got started in teaching. And then years later, I started my YouTube channel. And then a few years after that, I started my online piano courses.
Yes. Okay. So since we're there, and then we'll kind of back up a little bit later. But I heard another interview that you did, and those courses and YouTube channel kind of grew out of your teaching, that you were kind of saying the same things over and over, right? And you thought, if I just put this out here, then I can just refer them to this and not have to explain it all again.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we would, in a lesson, as if you're teaching a 30-minute lesson, you have some time to hear maybe a bit of technical exercises or work. maybe some foundational material. If they're beginners, maybe you're using a method book or something, and then maybe a repertoire piece or two. But rarely do I ever even get through that much in a lesson unless the student is like absolutely perfect at each of those, which is very rare. So it was nice. So if they were struggling with accuracy, for instance, I could say, okay, here's 1 or 2 tips specifically for you, for your playing that I see, but go watch my video about improving accuracy. And so they could go watch the, 10 or 20-minute video on YouTube and basically get another lesson. And it's been great. I've been able to save a lot of time in lessons. And now with the online courses, I'll cover an entire piece in like a 1-hour lesson, which is great because I have enough pieces in the library now that a lot of my private students can just choose from those, unless they're dying to play something else. That's totally fine too. But a lot of them, I've mostly covered the most popular pieces in the piano repertoire in that course. So of course, a lot of people want to play those pieces, and it's great. They basically get, a full hour lesson with me before they even come to their lesson. So the online endeavors, whether it's the free stuff through YouTube or the paid courses, has just increased my efficiency as a teacher. And then also it has the benefit of helping other students supplement if they want, or a lot of students around the world have said, I have a lot of people in India or Saudi Arabia, or where they're like, I don't have a quality piano teacher in my area. I use your courses to self-study, which has been really neat to hear about as well.
That's so fantastic that you're teaching others without actually ever taking them on as a student, and that they can self-paced and learn what they need to. That's fantastic. So any beginning teachers, I just received a question on Instagram just yesterday of a teacher saying, how can I keep my own skills moving forward as a pianist if I'm just teaching all the time? And so I gave her a couple of suggestions, but these courses of yours are definitely, and then as a teacher, when I'm teaching a piece that I'm not as familiar with, I can find it on YouTube often, and you can help me teach it. So it's like dual win-win-win all around. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's I've always said, if other people would make courses similar to mine that I respect as pianists, like if Sergei Babayan or Daniel Trifonov or Susan were to ever start something like this, I would love it because I could go see their take on it before I started a piece. It's a more efficient way when people are willing to share. I notice in the classical world, people are very secretive with certain things. I don't know where that ego comes from, but it's really prevalent. And I'm like giving away everything I know because I'm like, okay, if I die tomorrow, I don't want to die with this knowledge. And then a lot of times, if you share openly with others, they want more from you, and it can be a good. I'm not doing this as a way to, oh, I'm gonna get them, they're gonna want to study with me as my private student. I don't have enough time to teach more private students right now, but it's more of, there's everybody wins when you're willing to share your knowledge freely. And all of my mentors, Sergei Babayan, Susan Duehlmeir, Logan Skelton, and a few others as well, like Boris Slutsky or Awadaj Pratt, or some of these other guys that I've done some lessons with, were so open and willing to share anything they knew. They weren't holding back in a lesson. And I just always really admired that.
Yes. And follow-up question to that, what about teaching have you learned from these that you've studied with?
Everything. Yeah. Susan is definitely kind of like the rock, the foundation that I've built everything off of. And I'll still go see her 4 or 5 times a year, maybe. Every few months, I'll go play something new for her. That kind of keeps me motivated. Sometimes with the more intense pieces that I cover in my course, like I just did the first Chopin Scherzo, just learned that. And before I teach that, I've been getting more and more perfectionistic with myself. I've always been that way to an extent, but even more so now as the courses have grown. And I'll just go to Susan and make sure I'm not too wayward with anything, or that's just been amazing. Sergei Babayan, I would say, had this unbelievable characteristic of teaching his students color and touch. and listening in a way that I've never seen any other teacher teach, including master classes. I've watched master classes with some of the most famous people in the world, famous pianists in the world, and Babayan is one of a kind, especially in those realms. And then Logan Skelton had an amazing ability to teach things very simply and logically. So, a 4 or 5 year old could understand a very difficult concept. And the way he taught was very memorable. He would emphasize things in such a way that you just wouldn't forget it. So each of these teachers has been instrumental in my development. I can't really say what Susan's taught me in specific, because I think it's like pretty much everything I am as a pianist is what she's taught me. And then Babayan and Skelton enhanced that with unique ways. And Babayan also had an amazing ability to teach like technical tricks, ways of thinking about technique that got rid of tension. So I actually reference him often on my channel, even though I've probably only done 20 lessons with him. I've probably observed like 80 hours of lessons, because we did some academies where we could observe each other's lessons with him. But he had this ability to get rid of tension and enhance the students' color. So very artistic, very freeing lessons, all of them incredibly influential.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Yeah, I studied with Jeffrey Price at the U, and I can relate to what you're saying. I was very tense. I was very tight before coming to the U, and he unlocked that, and he said, "You'll be able to play like a god." And I'm like, "Ooh, sounds good." And then, and then just not just saying the effect of what we want, but how to physically get there and what to do with my arm and hand to really create the sound, and then the imagery and the artistic side. Yeah, changed my teaching forever for sure, as well as my own playing. So, well, let's lead into your top 3 tips for beginning teachers.
Okay.
Some of it kind of relates to what we've been talking about, but
Yeah, there's so many that I didn't really know what to say, but so these are 3 important things. I don't know if these are my top tips. There's just so many, but the first one would be to study with a really good teacher, like the best teacher you can afford, or the person you get along with the best, that inspires you the most. I've never regretted the money I've spent on private lessons with my teachers. That's some of the most precious time and so, that I've ever spent as a musician, is in a lesson, learning from the best, or researching online. A lot of master classes are available online. A lot of courses, a lot of resources are available online to help you if you need extra inspiration or just want extra material. So that'd be my first step, is find a really good teacher or mentor. The second tip would be to have patience and realize that piano is an ultra marathon. Various issues are going to come up in your technique, even simple things I've noticed as I've tried to increase past speed barriers. For instance, like with my own scales, sometimes I have to go back to basics of like, how would I teach a C major scale to my student? And thinking about mechanics and basics and going back to the foundation has helped me actually break some of those really advanced barriers that I've faced. And so if you're a beginner, have patience with yourself. If you're advanced, you're going to find just as many problems as you had when you were a beginner. They're going to be of a different nature, but having patience and enjoying the journey is so important. And also realizing that sometimes if something's not working, drilling it more and more is not going to help it. You can do that to an extent, but if it's still not working, you got to come at it from a different angle. And then the third tip would be practicing in a variety of tempos, especially slow practice. If you can do something slowly and master it, all the details, so your notes, your rhythm, your pedal, articulation, voicing, shape, rubato, if you can do all of those, then tempo, a long time ago, I came up with something called the piano mastery checklist, because some people were asking, like, what are the components of piano? Those 7 things I just said are the components of piano. And then the 8th step I always say is tempo. People are like, why do you put tempo at the end? I'm like, because if you cannot do effective voicing or articulation or pedaling in a slow tempo, you can do it. It'll just take you way longer to do it in a fast tempo versus getting back to basics and slow. And so every single day, I've been kind of, my wife's so sick of me mentioning this, but I've been reviving some scale speeds in the right hand ascending. That gave me some trouble after I played all the Liszt Paganini etudes in the Chopin First Concerto. Those are not easy pieces, and there was a couple passages in those that kind of screwed up, put a little tension in my scales for some reason. And so every single day I will warm up with some really slow scales. If I go and I just drill it fast, tension sets back in and I can get back into those old tense habits. So even after 30 years of playing, I'm still warming up with some scales, and it changes. For a couple of years, it was double thirds trills. For a few years, it was working on my regular trills in different fingerings, because I was never, versus getting 2-3 trills really fast, because I could always do 1-3 and 1-2 trills, 1-4, 1-5, 2-5, 2-4, 2-3, and then my really crappy trills are 3-4 and 4-5. 4-5 is almost better than 3-4. I hate 3-4 trills. Anyway, that was an obsession for a while. For a while, it was this etude, which is the hardest Chopin etude in my opinion. To get fast. Everybody thinks the fast etudes like that is a hard one, or the ocean etude or the revolutionary. Those are the hardest. No, it's this. Because and I still am terrible at it, because you have to play the whole piece with 3-4-5. But I would train with that piece. Like when I was playing the Mozart D minor concerto, I would actually warm up with Chopin Etude Opus 10 number 2, and magically all of my Mozart passages would suddenly become very clear, because that's targeting the weakest part of your hand, 3, 4, and 5. And so that was an obsession for a while. I've had various obsessions over the years, but realize that the slow practice, learning the mechanics, being patient, and then studying with a good teacher, those 3 things will really help in your journey. And also, don't take yourself too seriously. I do that all the time. I take myself way too seriously. I get way too stressed out about things. And if I just step back and I do something else, it actually helps my piano playing progress a lot. So hopefully that helps. Some suggestions.
And I'm thinking, as you're talking, a lot of these have kind of a dual meaning here, like have patience and enjoy small victories in your own playing. Have patience and enjoy and celebrate small victories in your students, and small victories of yourself as a teacher. If you have a breakthrough in a certain area as a teacher, and slow practice and creative practice and drilling things. Well, it takes time to build up your skills as a teacher too. And starting off with the handful of students, and then you get more confident and you get more abilities and you get more repertoire under you that you're able to teach. And then
I noticed that if you are really adamant about celebrating victories with your students, you can be so much harder on them with stuff that they're not good at. And I explain that to every student. And whenever I've taken on a new student, I'm like, I'm going to be a very, very, very strict teacher. I'm also going to tell you everything you're doing well, because I want more of that. And that's critical. A lot of teachers only focus on things that their students are not doing well. And if you can build a student's confidence, I remember I had a student, he's my most talented student right now, probably the most talented student I've ever taught. Innate abilities, but also a very, very hard worker. He can play like the Schubert Liszt Earl King faster than Evgeny Kissin. It's unbelievable. Like those octaves, let's see. I've never played it, so I suck at it. But to get those octaves, that's like a snail's pace. He's like after a couple days of work. So we targeted pieces with octaves for a while with him. He was about to quit piano due to some other things going on in his life. He was very discouraged and depressed. And we hit that piece and he played it so well. And I was like, man, I wish I could do this. I would tell him that. I'd be like, you're better at that than I am, and you're better at it than probably 98% of pianists out there as well, professional pianists. And he just flourished. And so we targeted that. And then we worked in other pieces that maybe he wasn't so good at, or things that he had a hard time with. And he, because of the confidence we developed with him in those areas that he's very good at, he had the confidence and the drive to fix his weaknesses. And that's the same thing with me. I have a few things that just have never felt comfortable in my hands after 30 years of playing. I think some people are innately gifted with certain abilities, and you want to develop your strengths and your weaknesses. A lot of people just say, I suck at this, this, and this, these three pieces I'm really bad at, and I'm just going to work those. Whereas you should actually be playing mostly stuff that you're inclined to play and inclined to play well, and then maybe throw in one or two pieces occasionally that target your weaknesses. But you don't want to say, okay, I'm not good at double thirds. Okay, I'm going to just play all double thirds repertoire for the next few years. And to get better at that, do one piece at a time and just gradually get better at that. It's so important to do that. Even as a professional pianist, I have to do that. I remember one time I was like, I'm going to learn all the Rachmaninoff Etudes Tableau, Opus 39 in the next 5 months. And I did number one and number 5. And those are very, very difficult pieces. All of them are. And I did those in the first month or two. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm pretty tired. I need like a refresher. So I did a Mozart sonata. And that was actually a beautiful balance, rather than just plowing through 4 more etudes. Or gosh, I'm forgetting how many etudes are in that set. It's not 4, I think it's 9. So 7 more etudes. Rather than plowing through those, I would balance it with something else. And I think that's just a healthy thing to do as a musician. Don't just focus on your weaknesses. Develop holistically and in many different styles and from many different time periods.
I absolutely agree. And it's a great principle of teaching, with students that come in and out, and we know their strengths and their weaknesses, and being able to play up their strengths for competitions, and then afterwards really work on some of those weaker areas. And yes, that's just a really good principle, again, for ourselves, and then in our own playing, and then also in our teaching. So before we sign off, hey, would you share kind of your setup here? Because I know you teach in person, but you're also teaching over, do you do Skype?
I used to do Skype. I do Zoom now because
Zoom.
you can manipulate more settings. Zoom was not good before COVID.
Mhm.
And then they just absolutely got their stuff together and really helped musicians a lot, because you can enable or disable certain features. Oh, geez, I don't even have my original sound on. That's the first thing. So up in your left corner, it'll say original sound for musicians. You got to press that on.
Oh.
I didn't do that this whole interview. Probably those music samples would have sounded better if I did. From a sound perspective. But yeah, basically I have a couple of different cameras hooked up through HDMI cables. So I've got an overhead cam and this side cam, and then I just put a little logo over here to fill the space. I could fill that with a pedal cam, but I don't want to be changing batteries every single time I put this on.
Yeah, and you probably don't need it that often,
yeah,
to show the pedaling with the advanced students.
Exactly. So, but I mean, you can go through, like, you could just have your side view here. You could just have, let's see, you could just have your overhead view. And then I just created these little things called macro settings, basically just saved settings. I also have one, I don't have my iPad with me, but you can plug in your iPad, and then I'm a little box on the left, and then my score is on the right, which is really helpful occasionally. If a student really is not understanding what you're pinpointing or where a fingering number goes, you can pull up the scores, zoom in on your iPad, and be able to do that. So this is all made possible through an ATEM Mini. ATEM is how you spell it, Mini. And I use the ATEM Mini Extreme because it has the buttons built in to toggle through those macro settings. Anyway, I have a whole video. If you just look up Josh Wright multiple camera angles on YouTube.
Oh, that's cool.
It'll walk you through exactly how I did that. And that was actually my old setup. I had to buy this little device called a Stream Deck to do these macro settings with one button pushes. The ATEM Mini Extreme is more expensive, but it'll do all of that for you. So I think it's worth the money. And it's not like video switchers, they're expensive. I think this was like $1,000, but 10 years ago, a nice video switcher was like, from what I understand, like 5 or 10 times that amount. So as COVID hit, that was actually a huge, I mean, it was horrible for the world, but it was a huge blessing to help teachers get online and develop that technology to help musicians. And then I just use a Yeti stereo microphone. My settings on the back, I generally am on the far left setting for a stereo sound, but you can use cardioid if you want. I go over that in another YouTube video. You could type Josh Wright Yeti microphone. That'll kind of review the microphone. That was forever ago that I made that, but I still use it every day. To get much better than that mic, you'd probably need to be spending $1,000 to $2,000. It's just incredible. That's $100 microphone, and it really is an incredible value. You'd have to spend a lot to get better than that. So that's a little bit about this setup. And if you're wanting to record inside your piano, but you want to do these multiple camera angles, you can do that too. And then you can do all sorts of stuff. I'm literally just I'm not even scratching the surface. This is so basic what I'm doing. I did this for a concert one time. You can set a timer to switch camera angles every like 15 seconds. So if you could set up 4 different cameras, and you can just press record, and it will record your entire show, but it's as if someone is like doing different cameras and manually switching it. You can put it on a timer. It's pretty cool technology.
That's way cool. Yeah. So teachers out there, if you're thinking of teaching online, I personally, not my favorite. It's a good option when they're sick, but if you have a good setup, it'd be much more enjoyable. You can show them the music, you can show them your hands, and it just deletes all of that confusion that can happen over Zoom. So that's awesome. And then you can teach in different time zones. You know, a lot of piano teachers, and if you're a mom and you want to not teach in the after school hours, but want to teach during the day, maybe you could get some people in other countries that are in a different time zone. So it could be a great thing. So yeah, look up his video on that. So tell us, Josh, where to find you. Your website and your Instagram is a fun follow. I love the quotes and fun things that are on there too. Tell us where people can find you, either for their own playing or for resources teaching.
Sure, no problem. Just my personal website is joshwrightpiano.com. My courses are joshwrightpiano.teachable.com. And if any of your users want a discount, they can just use the coupon code podcast. That'll give them 20% off.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere else, it's just Josh Wright Piano. Same thing on YouTube. So that handle will get you pretty much whatever you want of my stuff. And if anybody has any questions, my email is josh@joshwrightpiano.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you coming on, and we're just gonna elevate the whole piano world right here.
Awesome.
With this, thanks. Are you having as much fun with this podcast as I am? Are you getting some actionable tips? Help more beginning piano teachers find us by leaving a rating and a review. On Apple, you just scroll down to the bottom and click on the stars. And on Spotify, you click the 3 dots near the top and click Rate Show. Also visit angelatune.com for free videos, downloads, courses. Together, we'll change the world, one student at a time.